Have you ever, like, desperately wanted to avoid a loss, um, only to realize years later that the very loss you were fighting tooth and nail against was actually a shield?
Oh, right. Like it was protecting you from something much, much worse.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. You miss a flight because you get a flat tire on the way to the airport.
And you were just absolutely furious.
Totally furious. You're out there, kicking the tires, you're cursing your luck, you're standing on the side of the highway, calculating the financial hit of rebooking the ticket.
Right. The whole time just stressed out of your mind.
Wow. And then you find out later that the plane you were supposed to be on experienced a terrifying, catastrophic emergency.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And in that exact moment, the architecture of your entire reality just completely shifts.
It does.
Right.
You aren't cursing the flat tire anymore.
No, not at all. You realize that what you perceived as a frustrating obstacle, a loss of time, a loss of money, just massive inconvenience, was actually an invisible shield.
An invisible shield. I love that phrasing. But the tragedy of the human condition, right, is that we spend the vast majority of our lives grieving the flat tires.
Oh, constantly. We are completely blind to the catastrophes they're actually saving us from.
And that blindness to cause and effect, is exactly what we are dismantling today on this deep dive.
It's such an exciting topic.
It really is. So for you listening, today we are looking at translated excerpts from Tehero Mevlevi's monumental, multi-layered commentary on Volume 11 of Rumi's Mesnevi.
Yeah, and we should clarify, this isn't just a book of 13th century poetry.
Right. It's so much more than that. It's effectively an operating manual for the unseen mechanics of reality.
Calling it an operating manual is incredibly apt, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Tehero Mevlevi took Rumi's mystical poetry, which, let's be honest, can sometimes feel a bit abstract or esoteric.
For sure, it can be really dense.
Right, and he anchored it in this rigorous, systematic theology. He forces the reader to look at the gears turning behind the clock face of everyday life.
The gears behind the clock face. So it takes our basic assumptions about how the universe works, like if I do X, Y happens, and it just completely shatters them.
Exactly. The text basically demands that we stop looking at the superficial causes of our suffering or our success.
The surface level stuff.
Right, and start looking at the deeper metaphysical currents that are actually driving them.
Okay, let's unpack this because we need to jump right into the deep end here. The first narrative from this commentary drops us into a scenario where the physical rules of the universe just completely break down.
It's a really stark setting, too.
Oh, incredibly stark. We are in a scorching, sun-baked desert. An Arab caravan has completely run out of water.
And the text is super visceral about that.
Yeah, the water skins are bone dry. The camels' tongues are literally hanging out from the unbearable heat.
It's brutal.
It is. And the people have scattered across the burning sand, essentially just waiting for the end.
Well, it's a scenario that's specifically designed to represent the absolute collapse of all worldly systems.
Right, because there's no well.
Exactly. No rain cloud on the horizon, no hidden oasis. By every known law of physics and biology,
They are done.
they are finished. The mathematical equation of their survival has hit zero.
Zero. And into this totally hopeless equation steps the Prophet Muhammad. He surveys this massive caravan on the brink of death, and he doesn't pray for a huge rainstorm.
No, he doesn't do the expected miraculous thing.
Yeah, he doesn't strike the ground to create a spring or anything like that. Instead, he tells a few of the men to walk behind a specific sand dune nearby.
A very specific instruction.
Very specific. He tells them they will find a black slave riding a camel, and this slave will be carrying one single ordinary water skin.
Just one small leather bag for all those people.
One bag, and the instruction is, bring him to me whether he wants to come or not.
Which, I mean, that should immediately flag something for us as readers.
Right, like why the convoluted message?
Exactly. If the prophet is operating as a conduit for divine intervention, he doesn't need to send scouts to fetch a reluctant guy with a tiny amount of water.
It makes no logical sense.
It doesn't. He directs them toward a physical cause that is just laughably inadequate for the scale of the problem. A single water skin for an entire caravan of humans and camels is statistically meaningless.
And the human element of the story makes it even more complicated, I think, because the scouts run over the dune, and there he is, the slave with the water skin.
Just like he said.
Yeah, and they announce, the pride of humanity, the prophet, is calling for you. But the slave, he has no context for this.
None at all.
He's just a guy doing his job, transporting water for his master. He thinks, who is this guy? He must be a sorcerer or like a poet trying to cast a spell on me.
He's highly suspicious.
Oh, completely. He flat out refuses to move.
And we really have to pause on the slave's reaction here, because it represents the default state of human consciousness.
How so?
Well, he doesn't see a divine lifeline. He just sees an annoying interruption to his workday.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah, his suspicion is entirely logical based on his limited framework.
Mm.
He is trapped in the physical reality of his task.
Right, totally unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding, like right over the next sand dune.
Exactly.
So the scouts actually resort to dragging him and his camel back to the camp.
They physically have to force him.
Yeah, he is yelling, he is furious, just completely resistant. But when they finally pull him in front of the prophet doesn't perform some theatrical magic trick.
No lightning bolts or anything.
No. He just calmly tells the dying caravan to drink and to fill their empty containers from this one small leather bag.
And this is exactly where Tahirul Mevlevi introduces the concept of the veil.
A veil. Tell us about that.
Well, the text describes this incredible scene where an entire caravan, we're talking dozens of people, massive dehydrated camels, they're all drinking endlessly from this single water skin.
Just pouring and pouring.
Pouring and pouring. They fill every pot, every pan, every dry skin they have. And yet the original water skin never loses a single drop of volume.
That's insane.
It is. And the commentary actually notes a really beautiful poetic detail here. It says, the clouds in the sky look down in envy.
Envy. Why?
Because no natural storm had ever cooled such a hellish heat so efficiently.
Wow. But wait, I have a fundamental problem with this whole setup.
Okay, what is it?
If the water isn't actually coming from the physical capacity of the leather bag-like, if it's an endless divine supply, why use the bag at all?
That's the core question, isn't it?
It just feels like an unnecessary prop. Why not just manifest the water directly in their mouths or make it rain? Why uphold this flimsy illusion of the water skin if it's just going to confuse people?
I love that you brought that up, because that tension you're feeling is exactly the philosophical fulcrum of the text.
Really? So it's intentional.
Highly intentional.
Yeah.
Mevlevi dives deep into the Islamic theological concept of tekfin.
Tekfin, okay.
Yeah. It's the divine attribute of creation from absolute nothingness. The theology argues that the creator does not need physical mechanisms.
Right. God doesn't need a leather bag to make water.
Exactly. However, and this is the key, human psychology desperately needs them.
I don't follow. Why do I need a water skin to drink a miracle?
Well, because if you are exposed to the raw, unmediated power of tekfin just creation out of nowhere, your mind would fracture.
My mind would fracture.
Yes. Human consciousness is fundamentally built on causality.
Okay, cause and effect.
Right. If I drop a rock, it falls. If I drink water, my thirst is quenched. The commentary explains that God usually uses physical causes to run the world so that human logic has a predictable structure to operate within.
So the causes are like a safety net.
Exactly. The causes are a mercy. They are literally a courtesy to our fragile intellects. The water skin is just a familiar interface for an unfathomable reality.
Oh, I see. So you're saying the physical universe is essentially a graphical user interface.
A GUI. Yes, exactly.
Like the desktop of my computer. I click a little folder icon, but there isn't actually a physical manila folder inside my laptop.
No, of course not.
It's just lines of code and electrical impulses. But if the computer forced me to read the raw binary code just to open a document, my brain would melt.
That is an incredibly precise analogy. The physical world, the laws of physics, the water skin, they are all just icons on the desktop.
Mind blown.
They allow us to interact with the underlying code of reality without being completely overwhelmed by it. But the trap, and the text really hammers this point, is that we start believing the folder icon is the actual reality.
We think the icon is the thing itself.
Yes. We become so attached to the pipe that we completely forget the reservoir.
The text mentions the story of Moses striking the rock here, too.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It points to Surah Baqarah, where Moses strikes the stone with his staff and 12 springs erupt from it.
Right.
Now, the rock obviously didn't hold a hidden ocean inside it.
No.
And the wooden staff didn't magically synthesize H2O. They were merely the physical veils. But humanity has clung to these worldly causes since childhood.
We're obsessed with the causes.
We are. The commentary suggests this tragic irony. When the causes are present, we trust them so implicitly that we forget the creator entirely.
Oh, wow.
But the second the desktop interface freezes, like when the water skins run dry, we panic and start screaming for divine help.
It's like our reliance on complex infrastructure today. I mean, most of us walk into a grocery store and implicitly believe the grocery store creates the food.
Right, like it just spawns there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the supply chain breaks down and the shelves are empty, we lose our minds because our physical cause has failed. We don't know how to relate to the soil or the rain or the actual source of the provision.
And that's exactly why the miracle in the desert happens the way it does. The prophet uses the water skin to comfort their
We
minds.
give them that familiar desktop icon.
Yes, but he suspends its physical limits to shatter their reliance on causality. It's God's way of reminding the human being, I am running the code, not the icon.
That is so powerful. But the story doesn't end with the drinking, does it? There's a really profound psychological aftermath.
There is.
Because after everyone is saved, the prophet touches the furious slave's face.
The one who was dragged there against his will.
That's right. And instantly, the slave's physical appearance and his spiritual state undergo this radical metamorphosis.
A complete transformation.
The text says his face turns radiant, shining like a full moon with a beauty akin to the prophet Joseph. He goes from being a completely ordinary, angry man trapped in his daily grind
To a spiritually awakened, luminous being.
Yeah.
Because he has been exposed to the reality behind the veil, and witnessing the suspension of causality fundamentally alters his physical form. He's forever changed.
But when he travels back to his master's village, we hit another wall of human perception.
You do.
Because the master sees his camel walk into the camp, he sees his water skin, but he looks at the man riding the camel and has absolutely no idea who it is.
He's blind to him.
Completely. And the master gets highly aggressive. He accuses this radiant stranger of murdering his slave and stealing his property. He's yelling, you killed my servant and now justice has delivered you to my camp.
Notice the profound irony there. The master is looking directly at his own slave. But because the superficial packaging has changed, he is completely blind.
You can't compute it.
The commentary actually uses a specific term here: color. The master only knows his slave by his color, his outward form, his predictable physical traits.
The desktop icon again?
Exactly. He never knew the soul of the man.
So the slave has to de-escalate the situation. He asks his master logically, look, if I were a highway robber who murdered your man, why on earth would I ride his stolen camel directly into your camp?
It makes no sense.
None. So to finally prove his identity, the slave has to reveal these deep, intimate secrets that only the two of them shared from the very day the slave was purchased.
And that's the turning point.
Right, because only when confronted with hidden knowledge does the master's physical framework crack, allowing him to recognize the miracle and embrace faith.
The master's blindness is our blindness. If you only know a person by their physical form, their job, their status, their appearance, you will lose them the moment those superficial traits change.
Because you never really knew them.
Right. If you only know provision by the water skin, you will starve when it empties. The entire first movement of this text is a demand that we look past the color of reality and connect with the hidden essence.
Okay, I track with the idea that the physical world is just an interface. But I have another question.
Go for it.
If the supply of grace or miracles isn't bound by physical pipes, what actually triggers it? Does it just happen randomly?
That's the natural next question.
Because the next narrative in the text takes this idea of how the unseen interacts with the physical to a very intense, almost uncomfortable place.
It definitely shifts the paradigm. If the first story proves that physical causes are an illusion, the second story answers your exact question. What is the actual cause of divine intervention?
And what's the answer?
The text answer is pure, unadulterated need.
Okay, let's get into the story. We move to a woman who lives in the exact same village as that master and the transformed slave.
A neighbor, essentially.
Yeah, and she is a staunch non-believer, an idol worshiper, but she's heard the rumors about the caravan.
The word is spreading.
Right. So she decides she is going to test the prophet for herself to prove he's a fraud. She takes her infant child, a 2-month-old baby, wraps the baby in her scarf, and marches directly up to the prophet.
She's on a mission.
Oh, she's ready for a confrontation. But before she can even launch her trap, her 2-month-old infant opens his mouth and speaks.
Which is obviously a biological impossibility. A newborn speaking with the articulation and theological depth of a seasoned scholar.
It's wild. The baby looks at the prophet and says, "Peace be upon you, O messenger of God, we have come to you."
Imagine being the mother in that moment.
The mother is thrown into absolute shock and terror. Her entire worldview is disintegrating in her arms. She snaps at the baby, "Quiet. Who put this testimony in your ear? Who taught you to be so bold at this age?"
And the baby's response strips away any illusion that this is just a parlor trick or ventriloquism.
What does the baby say?
He says, God taught me And then Gabriel. In fact, Gabriel's hovering right above your head right now, giving me 100 proofs.
Wow.
Yeah. He points out that the angelic presence is physically pulling him away from the gravitational pull of the lowly material world.
The prophet then asks the baby for his name, and the infant replies, "To God, my name is Abdulaziz, the servant of the Almighty. But to this ignorant group of people I live with, my name is Abdal-Uzza."
Uzza being one of the primary pagan idols of the time.
Right, so the baby is physically trapped in this environment of disbelief, labeled with a pagan name, but his soul recognizes its true origin.
And here's where the story shifts from just a miracle to a devastating philosophical climax. As the baby rejects the idol, the text states that a literal scent of paradise fills the physical air.
A physical fragrance.
Yes, a fragrance from the divine realm becomes perceptible. Both the mother and the speaking baby smell it.
And their reaction to this scent is what completely threw me when I read it.
It's very unexpected.
They don't celebrate. They don't run back to the village to preach about what just happened. They are struck by a paralyzing existential fear.
Fear of what?
They realize they are experiencing this ultimate spiritual peak, and they think, what if we go on living our normal lives and we lose this? What if we fall back into our old habits, our old disbelief?
The contrast is too stark for them.
Exactly. The text says that wrapped in that divine fragrance, overwhelmed by the fear of losing that purity, they actually drop dead on the spot.
Just like that.
They die by choice, essentially, allowing their souls to exit the physical world rather than risk spiritual regression.
It is a shocking ending, especially to modern sensibilities, because we view the preservation of biological life as the ultimate good.
Of course, it feels like a tragic ending to us.
Right. But Tahirul Mevlevi uses this extreme conclusion to anchor a massive theological concept, Izdirar.
Okay, let's define that, because the text lingers really heavily on it.
Absolutely. Izdirar translates roughly to an extreme, inescapable state of distress or pure necessity.
Pure necessity.
Yes. It is the exact moment when all human agency, all illusions of control are completely crushed. The commentary connects this speaking baby to the Quranic account of Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Oh, how so?
Well, when Mary was in labor, she was exiled, exhausted, and facing the absolute destruction of her reputation. She reached a state of Izdirar. Her agony was so total that she wished she had been forgotten entirely.
She hit rock bottom.
Yes. And the text argues it was that specific depth of pain that caused the baby Jesus to speak from the cradle to defend her.
Okay, I want to push back hard on this.
Please do.
Because this borders on a philosophy that glorifies suffering. Are we saying God demands we be tortured to the point of wishing for death before he steps in?
I see why you'd ask that.
It just feels incredibly cruel. It sounds like you're saying pain is the currency you use to buy miracles.
I understand completely why it sounds that way, but you have to separate the concept of Izdirar from, like, a masochistic desire for pain.
Okay, separate them how?
The text isn't glorifying the suffering itself. It is diagnosing the architecture of reality. The argument is that absolute, genuine need creates a vacuum that the universe is compelled to fill.
A vacuum.
Yeah. Mevlevi writes that wherever there is a pain, the cure goes there. Wherever there is a lowland, the water flows there.
So it's like a law of spiritual thermodynamics.
Exactly.
The universe just naturally abhors a vacuum.
Precisely.
Yeah.
If you are full of yourself, full of your own plans, your own ego, your reliance on your water skins and your desktop icons, there is no room for divine intervention.
Because you're a closed system.
You're a closed system. Izdirar is the painful shattering of that closed system. When a person hits absolute rock bottom, when every worldly cause has failed them, they finally emit a signal of pure demand.
And the supply comes.
The text insists that God creates the supply because of that demand.
The analogy Mevlevi uses here is really striking. He says a baby's delicate throat must be formed in the womb before the mother's milk is allowed to flow.
Right. The physical mechanism of the milk exists as a direct response to the existence of the infant's hunger.
Yes. The need is the architect of the provision.
That is beautifully put. And that is why the text issues a direct, almost aggressive command to the reader. Do not seek water, cultivate thirst.
Cultivate thirst, not build better pipes or find a deeper well.
Exactly. Human beings spend like 99% of their energy engineering the supply side of their lives. We obsess over logistics, careers, bank accounts.
We want to secure the supply.
Right. But the spiritual masters are saying we have it entirely backward. If you make your soul genuinely thirsty for truth, the water of truth will break the laws of physics to reach you. It will flow from above and below.
That reframes the death of the mother and the infant perfectly, actually.
How so?
Well, their exposure to that scent of paradise created a thirst so absolute, a need so overwhelming that their physical bodies could no longer contain it.
It overpowered the vessel.
Yeah, the supply of grace rushed in so violently that it shattered the biological vessel. It's a terrifying thought, honestly. That true spiritual fulfillment might be fundamentally incompatible with our comfortable everyday attachments.
It is terrifying.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a crucial pivot in Mesnevi's commentary.
Okay, where do we go from here?
Think about this. If absolute need creates miraculous supply, what happens when we encounter things we don't need? What happens when the universe introduces frustration, loss, and annoyance into our perfectly managed lives?
Well, we get angry. We curse the flat tire.
Exactly. And the third narrative in our text is a masterclass in completely inverting how we perceive those daily nuisances.
Right, so we move from these grand life or death scenarios in the desert to a very quiet, mundane moment in the life of the prophet.
Very slice of life.
Yeah, he is preparing for his daily prayers, he has washed up, performed his ablutions, and he reaches for his footwear.
And it's a specific piece of footwear.
The commentary highlights that he is reaching for a leather boot, a mess that was actually a diplomatic gift from the ruler of Egypt.
So it's a nice item, something of value.
Definitely. As he extends his hand to put it on, an eagle swoops out of the sky, snatches the boot right out of his grasp, and flies high up into the air.
Just put yourself in that situation for a second.
It's so jarring.
You are trying to engage in a sacred, peaceful act of prayer, and a wild animal violently interrupts you, steals your property, and leaves you standing there barefoot.
It's an indignity.
It really is. The text doesn't shy away from the prophet's humanity here. It acknowledges that he was internally annoyed by the disruption.
He's human. But the disruption has a hidden teleology, right?
It does.
While hovering high above, the eagle turns the heavy leather boot upside down. And falling out of the toe of the boot drops a massive, deadly black snake.
A venomous viper that had coiled itself inside the dark warmth of the leather.
A snake that would have instantly struck the prophet's foot the second he slid it in.
Instantly.
So the eagle watches the snake fall to the ground, then swoops back down, gently places the empty boot in front of the prophet, and actually speaks to apologize.
A very polite eagle.
Very polite. The eagle says, "I had to commit this rude act out of absolute necessity. Woe to anyone who steps forward blindly into the dark."
Wow.
The prophet is stunned. He thanks the eagle, recognizing that what he just categorized as a frustrating random loss was, in fact, a highly coordinated, life-saving intervention.
This story is so crucial because it introduces two Sufi terms that sit at the absolute heart of this philosophy.
What are they?
Sifa and Vifa. Sifa means cruelty, nuisance, or painful disruption.
Like the eagle stealing the boot.
Exactly. Vifa means loyalty, faithfulness, and protection. The grand illusion of human life is that we constantly mistake Vifa for Sifa.
We think the eagle is attacking us when it's actually disarming a landmine.
Yes, perfectly said. Mesnevi uses this narrative to offer one of the most profound definitions of Sufism you will ever encounter. He quotes an early mystic who was asked, "What is Sufism?"
What's the answer?
The answer was, "Finding joy in the heart during times of sorrow or loss."
See, my modern brain immediately rebels against that.
I knew it would. Why?
Finding joy in sorrow just sounds like toxic positivity. It sounds like someone telling you to just smile through your trauma because everything happens for a reason. That can be a very damaging psychological trap.
I'm really glad you brought that up. Because toxic positivity requires you to deny the reality of the pain. It demands you pretend the stolen boot doesn't matter.
Right.
Mesnevi's not saying that. The prophet was annoyed. The loss was real. The philosophy here isn't about slapping a happy sticker on a tragedy.
Then what is it?
It is an ontological shift. You aren't finding joy in the pain itself. You are finding joy in this sudden, piercing realization of what the pain is buying off.
Give me an example of what you mean by buying off.
Okay, think about biological immunity. A high fever is an agonizing experience. You are sweating, you are shivering, your muscles ache.
It's the worst.
It is. Now, a primitive understanding of medicine would view the fever as the enemy, an attack on the body.
Something to be fought.
Right? But modern medicine knows the fever is the body's defense mechanism. The heat is literally cooking the virus. If you artificially suppress the fever too quickly, the virus multiplies and kills you.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
The pain of the fever is the vifa, the loyalty of your immune system, masquerading as sifa, the cruelty of illness. Finding joy in the fever doesn't mean you enjoy sweating.
No one enjoys that.
No. It means you find profound peace in knowing the system is fighting for your life.
Wow. Okay, that shifts it completely. The text actually commands the reader, whatever you lose by the decree of fate, know for certain that it has acted as a shield against a greater affliction.
The flat tire.
The flat tire, the broken engagement, the lost job, the failed business venture, these are the eagles stealing your boots. It feels like a violation, but it's shaking out a hidden snake.
And there is a deeply mystical layer to this exchange between the prophet and the eagle that we cannot overlook.
Tell me.
The prophet, in a moment of extreme humility, apologizes to the bird. He says, normally God shows us the unseen realities, but in that moment, my heart was occupied with itself. I was focused on myself, so I didn't see the snake.
He owned up to his distraction.
He did. But the eagle's response is astonishing.
Right. The eagle tells him, don't praise me. My ability to see the hidden snake wasn't my own power. It was actually a reflection of your own spiritual light.
This is a radical concept regarding how consciousness interacts with reality. The eagle is essentially saying, I was just a mirror.
A mirror.
Yes. The commentary explains that a luminous, spiritually pure person reflects that light onto their environment, and the environment organizes itself to protect them.
So the environment responds to your inner state.
Conversely, a dark, ego-driven person turns their surrounding environment into a furnace of their own making.
So it's not just that the universe randomly sends an eagle. It's that the prophet's internal state of purity recruited the eagle into his defense system.
Exactly. The physical world is highly responsive to the spiritual state of the observer. If you are deeply aligned, your very presence shakes the snakes out of the boots before you step in them, even if it requires an eagle to do it.
But this naturally leads to a terrifying question, I think.
Let's hear it.
If the universe operates on this hidden ledger, where losses absorb larger calamities, what happens if you try to hack the system? Like if you figure out the mechanics, can you use spiritual insight to avoid both the snake and the loss of the boot?
That is the ultimate temptation. And it is the subject of the longest, most intricate, and frankly most chilling story in the entire commentary.
We are introduced to a young man who comes to the prophet Moses with a specific, incredibly dangerous demand.
A very foolish demand.
He begs Moses to teach him the language of animals, and his justification is layered in this really pious language.
He thinks he sounds very holy.
Right. He tells Moses, human language is solely obsessed with survival, getting bread and water, buying and selling. But maybe the animals have a deeper existential wisdom. If I can hear them praising God, I will gain spiritual enlightenment.
It's the classic rationalization. He wraps a desire for power and insider knowledge in the cloak of spiritual seeking.
But Moses is a prophet. He sees the architecture of reality.
He recognizes the hubris immediately. Moses tells the man, go away and drop this desire. This carries a massive danger ahead of it and behind it. You should seek spiritual awakening directly from God, not from decoding the chirps of birds and the barks of dogs.
But human nature is nothing if not contrarian.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, tell someone a door is locked for their own protection, and they will spend their entire life trying to pick the lock.
They won't rest until it's open.
The man refuses to back down. He accuses Moses of being ungenerous, of hoarding divine knowledge. He pushes and pushes until God finally intervenes and speaks to Moses.
And what does God say?
God says, open his hand to free will. Give him what he wants.
We have to unpack God's response here, because it deals with the absolute core of Islamic theology regarding human agency.
It's a massive point.
The text uses the term karamna, referring to the Quranic verse, stating God has honored the children of Adam. How did he honor them? By placing them on the honored horse of free will.
But if Moses knows this knowledge will destroy the man, why would God permit it? Isn't it cruel to hand a loaded gun to a toddler?
The commentary explains that free will is the salt of worship.
The salt of worship.
Yes, a meal without salt is bland and meaningless. Obedience without the capacity for disobedience has no moral weight.
Oh, that makes sense.
The angels cannot disobey, therefore their obedience is mechanical. Humans are given the terrifying dignity of choice. God does not force us into compliance. He gives us the reins, even if he knows we are going to steer the horse directly off a cliff.
So Moses relents. He teaches the man the language of the domesticated animals, specifically his guard dog and his rooster.
The one's right outside his house.
Yeah. The man goes home practically vibrating with excitement. And the very next morning, the insider trading begins.
Day one.
Day one. The man is standing by his door. The maid shakes out a tablecloth, and a crust of stale bread falls to the ground. The rooster, being quick, snatches it up.
And the dog is not happy.
The dog is offended. He complains in animal language. You can eat grain and seeds. I can only eat scraps like bread. Why are you stealing my provision?
And the man is just listening to all of this.
He's eavesdropping. And the rooster replies to the dog with a prophecy. The rooster says, "Don't worry about this crust of bread. Tomorrow, the master's prize horse is going to fall violently ill and die. You dogs will have a massive feast."
And here the man's true motivation is unmasked.
Exactly. He doesn't fall to his knees in awe of divine providence. He doesn't pray for the horse.
Oh, what does he do?
He immediately runs to the market and sells the horse. He offloads it onto an unsuspecting buyer. He dodges the financial hit.
He thinks he's an absolute genius.
A master of his own destiny.
So day 2 arrives. The dog is hungry and furious. The dog barks at the rooster, "You lied. The horse didn't die here. We got nothing."
And the rooster says,
The rooster calmly replies, "I didn't lie. The horse died, but it died in the hands of the new owner. The master sold it and shifted the loss. But be patient. Tomorrow the master's mule will drop dead."
and again, the man hears this, sprints to the market, and sells the mule.
Unbelievable.
Day 3. The dog is irate. "You are the king of liars. Where's the meat?"
And the rooster defends its honor. "We roosters are like the musicians, the callers to prayer. We only speak the truth."
Right.
The rooster says, "The mule died, but the master cheated the buyer. But fear not. Tomorrow, the master's most valuable slave is going to die. The master's family will have to hand out bread and food to the poor and the dogs in mourning."
And the man cannot believe his luck. He sells his slave that very afternoon. He is ecstatic.
He's literally patting himself on the back.
The text has him boasting, "Since I learned the language of birds and dogs, I have sewn shut the eyes of evil fate. I am untouchable."
Wow. This is the peak of human arrogance.
Yeah.
He believes he has transcended the physical laws because he hacked the timeline.
He thought he beat the system.
But he fundamentally misunderstands what a loss actually is. He thinks a loss is just a subtraction of wealth. He doesn't realize it's a transaction.
A transaction. So the 4th day arrives, and the reversal is devastating.
What happens?
The dog confronts the rooster one last time. "Nothing died. You are a fraud." And the rooster reveals the terrifying truth behind the curtain of reality.
The unseen mechanics.
The rooster says, "The horse, the mule, and the slave all died." But those physical losses were meant to be the master's shields. They were designed to absorb the blow of a heavy divine decree.
The lightning rods.
Yes. The rooster says, by running away from the financial loss, the master has redirected the arrow. Tomorrow, the master himself is going to die. His heirs will slaughter an ox for his funeral, and you will finally get your feast.
The man's entire strategy collapses. He didn't outsmart fate. He systematically unequipped his own armor. The commentary goes incredibly deep here into the mechanics of Kaza, the inescapable divine decree.
Okay, let me ask a highly practical question here.
Sure.
Is the text saying we shouldn't practice basic risk management?
How do you mean?
Like, if I know my stock is going to crash, shouldn't I sell it? If I know my car is breaking down, shouldn't I trade it in? Is being financially prudent a sin in this philosophy?
No, the text is not advocating for deliberate self-sabotage or ignoring practical reality. The sin wasn't selling the horse. The sin was the hubris of believing he could subvert the ledger of fate through stolen knowledge.
The motivation behind it.
Exactly. Mesnevi explicitly states that earthly losses, physical ailments, financial hits, everyday struggles act like autumn winds.
Autumn winds.
Think about an autumn wind violently stripping the dead leaves from a tree. It looks destructive, but it prepares the tree for new life. These earthly losses strip away the leaves of our sins. They absorb the heavy blows.
The text calls them lightning rods, essentially.
Exactly. When a massive electrical charge of Kaza is coming toward your house, you want a lightning rod to take the hit. The horse, the mule, and the slave were meant to be the lightning rods.
He sold them.
When he sold them, he removed his grounding wires. The charge had nowhere left to go but directly into his own physical body.
That is terrifying. And the realization of this hits the man physically. The text says he is gripped by terror and he immediately becomes nauseous.
The physical symptoms start.
The sickness of death has already rooted in his stomach. He runs back to Moses, throws himself in the dirt, completely broken. He begs, "I was a fool, please rescue me."
But the architecture of reality cannot be infinitely bent. Moses looks at him with pity and says, "The arrow has left the bow. It is not the custom for the arrow to return to the archer."
Fate has been locked in.
The man's body is forfeit.
Moses doesn't just abandon him, though. He prays for him, but he prays for something very specific.
He prays for the preservation of the man's faith. Moses says, basically, Lord, he has destroyed his physical vessel through his own arrogance, but please let him die with his spiritual core intact.
Let him keep his faith.
Right. So his soul isn't annihilated along with his body. The man goes home, the nausea overtakes him, and he dies precisely as the rooster predicted.
It's a terrifying story, but, as I sit with it, it's also weirdly comforting.
Comforting. How so?
Well, if every loss we experience is actually an autumn wind clearing out dead leaves, or a lightning rod absorbing a fatal blow, then fighting so bitterly against our daily losses isn't just pointless, it's spiritually dangerous.
That's a great insight. It demands a posture of profound surrender. Mesnevi knows that when a calamity strikes, when you lose the boot, when the flat tire happens, you should pay the physical toll willingly.
You pay the lesser toll to preserve the greater treasure.
Exactly, which is your soul.
But this logic leads us directly into our fifth theme.
Let's go there.
If we are supposed to surrender to the loss of our property or our comfort because it preserves our deeper selves, how are we supposed to view the ultimate loss? How do we process the loss of life itself?
That is the ultimate question. And the commentary shifts tone drastically here. We move from the cautionary tale of a foolish man dying in terror to the triumphant deathbed of a spiritual master.
We look at the final moments of Bilal.
Yes. Bilal is a towering, iconic figure in Islamic history. He was an Abyssinian slave who endured horrific, unimaginable torture for his faith during the earliest days of Islam.
Just brutal suffering.
He was pinned under scorching boulders in the desert sun because he refused to renounce his belief. He was eventually freed and became the first muezzin, the man who calls the community to prayer.
So his life was defined by intense physical hardship but staggering spiritual elevation.
And Mesnevi paints a deeply moving portrait of his final hours. Bilal is incredibly weak. The text says his physical form has faded and thinned like a crescent moon.
A crescent moon.
He is lying on his deathbed, and his wife is sitting beside him, weeping bitterly. She looks at his failing body and cries out, "Alas, what sorrow! The house is ruined."
Her reaction is completely natural.
Entirely natural.
She is looking through the lens of human attachment. She sees the end of a partnership, the decay of a body, the collapse of their shared physical reality.
But Bilal's reaction is the exact polar opposite. He looks at her weeping and joyfully corrects her. He says, No, what joy, I'm finally returning home from exile.
He doesn't view death as an ending or a subtraction.
Not at all.
He views it as a reunion. He tells her he is finally going to join the inner circle of God.
To understand Bilal's joy, the commentary introduces several brilliant, evocative metaphors regarding the nature of the human body.
Like the overheated bathhouse.
Yes, the hammam. Mesnevi explains that to the average, unawakened person, this physical world looks vast, beautiful, and limitless. But to a highly developed soul like Bilal, who has tasted the infinite nature of the spiritual realm, the physical world feels as suffocating as a severely overheated bathhouse.
I love this analogy. A bathhouse might be a large, beautiful building, but if the steam is turned up too high, the heat makes your chest tight.
You can't breathe.
Right. Your soul feels cramped. You are sweating, you are exhausted, and you don't feel relief until you push open the heavy wooden door and step outside into the cool, open air.
To Bilal, his physical body was that suffocating, overheated room.
The text introduces an even more relatable metaphor, I think.
Yeah.
The tight shoes.
Oh, this one is so good.
This one hit me hard. Mesnevi says that walking through this world, for a spiritually awakened person, is like walking across a vast, stunningly beautiful desert landscape, but you are wearing incredibly tight, agonizingly painful shoes.
Just constant pinching with every step.
Yes. Other people see you walking this wide open space and they think, wow, look how free they are, look at the beautiful scenery, but they have no idea the absolute agony your feet are in with every single step.
It perfectly captures the internal friction of existence. The physical body, its constant need for food, its aches, its hormonal shifts, its sheer density, becomes the tight shoe pinching the infinite soul.
The commentary expands on this by pointing out what happens when we sleep. Sleep, it argues, is the temporary removal of those tight shoes.
Which is why sleep feels so good.
It explains why sleep feels universally restorative. It's not just biological rest, it's the soul getting a brief reprieve from the heavy, demanding machinery of the body.
It's taking off the painful shoes at the end of a long day.
Exactly. But death, Death is taking those shoes off forever and throwing them away.
Never having to put them back on.
Right. Death is stepping out of the bathhouse into the eternal breeze. And Mesnevi takes this one step further with perhaps the most profound paradigm shift in the text.
What's that?
He compares the process of dying to a mother's birth pangs.
A mother in labor. That completely inverts how we look at terminal pain.
When a mother is in labor, she experiences intense, terrifying physical agony. Her body is pushed to its absolute limit, but we do not view that pain as a tragedy because it is not a destructive pain.
It is a creative pain.
Yes, it is a necessary mechanical friction required to bring a new life out of the dark room and into the vast world.
And the text argues the pain of death is the exact same mechanism.
Precisely. The pain of illness, the failing of the organs, the final rattle of breath, it hurts the physical body, which is the mother in this analogy.
Right.
But it is the ultimate liberation for the baby, the soul, which is finally being born out of the dark, cramped room of the physical universe and into the limitless spiritual reality.
So when Bilal's wife cries, "The house is ruined," she is mourning the womb. She is mourning the breaking of the eggshell.
But Bilal knows the shell has to shatter for the bird to fly.
He recognizes that for 60 or 70 years, he was just a fetus gestating in the womb of the world, and now, finally, the labor has begun.
Man. Okay, we have covered massive paradigm-shifting ground today.
We really have.
From water skins that defy physics, to speaking infants commanded by sheer need, to eagles shaking snakes out of our stolen boots, to the lethal hubris of dodging our destined losses, all the way to reframing death itself as a joyous birth.
A lot to process.
It is. But as we reach the culmination of Mesnevi's commentary, the text seems to anticipate a very specific feeling in the reader.
Overwhelm. Cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. My brain is spinning. The text anticipates that we're going to ask, how can my limited, logical human brain possibly comprehend a reality where death is birth, where loss is protection, and where the laws of physics are just a polite illusion?
Right. It feels impossible to grasp. But Mesnevi tackles this epistemological problem head-on. He sets up a fundamental contrast between two concepts, nas and kias.
Nas and kias, bring those down for us.
Nas refers to absolute divine revelation, the unvarnished raw truth of reality. Kias refers to human logical deduction, our ability to draw analogies and calculate cause and effect.
Okay, so revelation versus logic.
Exactly. And to explain the unbridgeable gap between nas and kias, the text gives us one final, devastatingly simple metaphor, the candy analogy.
The candy analogy. I love this one.
It is brilliant in its simplicity. The text asks, imagine trying to explain the profound, complex pleasure of adult physical intimacy to a 5-year-old child. How do you do it?
You can't. They don't have the biological hardware or the psychological software to process the concept.
It's completely alien to them.
Totally alien.
Exactly. So how do you bridge the gap? The only way the child can somewhat grasp that a good experience is happening is if you relate it to the peak experience of their own limited world. You tell the child, it's like eating a really sweet piece of candy.
And the child nods and says, oh, okay, I love candy, so this intimacy thing must be really great. The analogy works functionally to convey a positive value.
Right. But the actual reality of the adult experience has absolutely nothing to do with chewing on a piece of sugar. The candy is merely a placeholder.
A simplified vocabulary.
Yes. It is a drastically simplified vocabulary used to hint at a reality the child is entirely locked out of.
And the crushing realization here is, we are the child.
We are the child. Our highly evolved, deeply proud, logical brains, our kias, are trying desperately to decode the nas of the universe.
We're trying to understand the infinite with a finite brain.
When ancient texts speak of heavenly rivers of milk and honey, or when we try to map the mechanics of how a flat tire saves us from a plane crash, we're essentially being told it's like sweet candy.
We accept the metaphor, we analyze it, we write theology books arguing about the exact flavor of the candy.
Completely unaware that the actual reality is operating on a dimensional level we cannot even perceive.
We cannot grasp the true essence, the mahayat of God's mercy or the architecture of fate. We can only perceive its localized effects in our tiny three-dimensional sandbox.
That is the ultimate humbling takeaway of Tahirul Mevlevi's commentary. Our intellect is an incredible tool. It is absolutely necessary for navigating the physical world, for building bridges and curing diseases.
But it has a ceiling.
It has a ceiling. Eventually, the intellect must bow to spiritual intuition. Just as the child must eventually grow up and mature to experience the reality beyond the candy, The human soul must eventually shed the tight shoes of the physical world to experience the reality beyond the veil of causes.
It demands that we stop treating our immediate surface-level reality as the final word on our existence.
Yes.
If the water skin is just an icon, if the eagle is a mirror, and if our losses are lightning rods, then every single interaction we have is layered with invisible meaning.
It's an invitation to radical surrender. Not a passive, apathetic surrender, but an active, terrifying trust in the wisdom of the unseen over the panic of the seen.
Which brings this entire philosophical journey right back to where we started, sitting in our cars, gripping the steering wheel, furious about a flat tire.
The universe is constantly, silently operating on this hidden frequency of vifa, of loyalty and protection, often disguised as siphonusence and pain.
We are constantly being saved in ways we will never have the capacity to understand. So I want to leave you, the listener, with a lingering thought. We spent the last hour dissecting how the deepest truths of the universe often arrive, dressed as our greatest frustrations.
The hidden snakes.
Exactly. If every minor loss you experience is secretly absorbing a heavy blow meant for your soul, and if every physical limitation is just a tight shoe waiting to be removed so you can finally run free, how does that change the way you will react to the very next piece of bad news you receive today?
It's a profound question.
When the delay happens, when the project fails, when the boot is snatched from your hands, will you curse the eagle? Or will you take a breath, look at the empty sky, and thank it for shaking out the snake? Thank you for diving into the unseen with us today. We'll see you next time.